This video is for anyone who would like to play music at church but is not sure how to turn a chord chart into piano accompaniment. So I'm going to use the song Rejoice by Dustin Kensrue. It's really simple to learn and to play. So this song is in the key of D major. It has an F sharp and a C sharp. So throughout the whole song, we will not be playing any F naturals or C naturals. If you want to play piano at church and you want to use chord charts, it's really important that you memorize all the common scales, for example, C, D, G, A, E, and a few others as well, but they're probably the most common. So if you already know all about chords, you can probably skip ahead a little bit, but if you don't, here we go. In the key of D major, the home chord, the chord that feels like home, or the tonic, is the chord D major. So to find a chord, you'll put your thumb at the bottom on D, which is the name of the chord, and then you need number 1, 3, and 5 in the scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need 1, 3, and 5. So this is D major. The next chord in the song Rejoice is G. And to find G, again, we're going to put our thumb on the G and we're going to use 1, 3, and 5. Of the notes in the D major scale. We don't change to G major just because it's using the G chord. We still stay in the D major scale, and this is those notes in that scale. So let's have a go at playing the first line of the song. It's just 2 bars of D and 2 bars of G, and we're in 4/4, which is 4 beats to a bar. So basically we're going to play 8 beats of D and then 8 beats of G. And the second line is actually the same, so we'll repeat it. What I'm going to do is use my left hand to just play the bass note. So when we're playing D, I'll just play a D. And I'll use my right hand to play the chords. D major and G major, like that. And I think I'm just going to tap out the beat with the bass and just hold the chords to start with. So that would actually work as piano accompaniment. If you were playing with a guitar and drums and you had a singer, that would be fine. But you can make it a little bit more interesting rhythmically, and I'll show you some other things you can do in a minute. But just muck around with it and see if you can do something just to add a little bit of extra. I'm also using my pedal and just lifting it gently when I change chords. If you don't want to get too mucky, you could change it more often than that as well. We might carry on now with the next part of the song, and I'll show you the other 2 chords that appear in the song. In the third line of the verse, there is a B minor. Now, we're still just going to use the notes that are in the D major scale. We're going to start on B, and then we're going to go 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, it's an F sharp because we're playing in D major, so there are no F naturals. And you'll notice I also counted the C sharp as 1 there, not the C natural. And that's a minor chord. So B minor is B, D, and F sharp. And the next chord in that line is A, which is A, C sharp, E. And the more you play church songs and pop songs and any kind of things with chords in them, you will just memorize these and they will come to you straight away. You won't have to do the counting thing. Or you can look them up online. What is B minor? It's made up of B, D, and F sharp. Okay, so the third line is for the one who holds the heavens. For the one again, goes back to G, and then it does A at the very end. And we're leading into the chorus. So I might just do the verse all together. I'm just going to make up the rhythm as I go along. Okay, here we go. The verse. Now you'll notice with my hands I do a lot of jumping around. I'm jumping from the D major up to the G major, and especially jumping up to that B major was quite awkward. It's totally fine to do that and it sounds fine, but what you can do is you can sort of get clever with the way you position your fingers to play the same notes of that chord but in a different, what's called voice. You can voice them differently. So here's my D major. The notes are always going to be D, F sharp, and A. And instead, I can actually flip that around a little bit and bring the D up to the top. It's still the same notes, but I've voiced it with the D at the top. Okay? And what that allows me to do is move very smoothly into the G major, which is there, G, B, and D. D major, G major. There's no jumping and losing my place. So I'll show you what that looks like with the voicing in the first two lines of the verse. That was a bit sloppy, but you get the idea. You could voice all of them so that your hand didn't have to do a lot of jumping at all. But you also want to keep in mind which notes you have at the top, because you don't want to mess around with what the singer is doing and play too much of the melody. But you don't have to play all three notes all the time. In fact, sometimes it's nicer if you just play two notes. You get the idea. You can do a little pattern with the chord notes. That can sound really nice as well. Again, don't get messy and try and take over from the melody, but it can be a nice little accompaniment piece. Hopefully you're getting the idea now. So I'm going to show you how I would play the chorus, which has D, B minor, G, and an A as well in the very last line. The timing is probably a little bit quicker. You're changing chords more quickly, but if you know the song, you'll be able to hear when that's supposed to happen. Let's go for it. I just started playing the little interlude between the chorus and the second verse, which I think is just D, G, D, G. Basically, that's all you need to know to be able to go from here and just start experimenting and playing around with any church song, learn the chords, and then just find what you are comfortable and competent doing. Because if you're comfortable with it, it's going to sound much better than if you try something that's really difficult or extreme and you do it badly. The other thing though to talk about is dynamics, and sometimes you'll want to play really loud, sometimes you'll want to have it really soft and not have a lot going on, because you might it might be that kind of song, or it might be a verse in the song where it's musically interesting and perhaps meaningful for you to pull back a little bit to have that, reflective moment. For example, in this song, The third verse, All Our Sickness, All Our Sorrows, that's usually a verse where the band will pull back and have it quite quiet and then build up to the chorus again. Just keep it simple. I wouldn't try and do fancy patterns. What I might do is just go back to what I did at the very start, which was to hold chords. So you could just go for All Our Sickness. And the drummer or the guitarist might be tapping out a bit of a beat here, so it's not up to you to keep the rhythm. You're just doing a tiny bit of, for want of a better word, sparkle on the top to keep it going, and then turning tragedy, which is the third line. And you could build up to that last chorus, which I should mention has a D over F sharp. So what this means is it's a D chord, but at the bottom you want to play an F sharp. Now if you have a bass player, don't worry, because they'll cover that F sharp, but it's going to sound really good if you do it as well. So you could voice it with an F sharp at the bottom. In your left hand you could play the F sharp as the bass. I'll play a little bit of the last line and then the D over F sharp so that you can hear the effect. Usually when you have one of those chords, it's leading into something, so the F sharp is leading into the G. You can add those in sometimes, but you don't want to overdo it, and again, if you have a bass player, they're probably gonna take that role for you. Okay, very last thing. Specific to this song, there is a little riff that you might hear in the recording. If you and the band decide that that's what you want to do for an intro. It's actually high up, but I'll just play it down here so you can see it. It's D, C sharp, A, and then a little sort of trill thing over the F. F sharp, sorry. If you're clever and you've got really strong fingers, you can do an octave. I'm not agile enough to do that, and especially when I'm up there and I'm a little bit nervous, it's always harder to do things in front of an audience, so I don't tend to bother being fancy. I might just pump the bass with my left hand while I'm doing that riff up here in high D. You can't see it, but you can hear it. You don't have to do that as an intro if you're happy to just do chords. Okay, I said that was the last thing. This is actually the last thing. Sometimes it is okay to add in a note or two that's not supposed to be in the chord. I find especially note number 2, the second note, can be really nice. Not like that, but I'll show you what it sounds like. So in G, 2 is A because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll show you what it sounds like. Did you hear that little sneaky A? I don't know, I think that sounds good sometimes, but you don't want to get too complicated. That leads me though to sustained chords. Sometimes you'll see D sus 4, but basically a D sus 4 is you sustain or you add in the 4th note in that chord, not necessarily in the scale, but in that chord that you're sitting in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in D sus, it will be a G. And usually, if you're playing the 4, you want to let go of the 3rd note. If you are hitting that, oh, it's not going to sound good. So if you just let go of the 3rd note in that chord and instead play the 4th, sometimes if you even let go of the 5th. Yeah, sometimes less is more. Another example would be G sus 4, which is G with the 4th note of that chord, which is C. And that's another sort of leading chord that you'll have, where it's wanting to resolve